So in this video, I would like to now present you with one of the first ideas that really helped me to start understanding myself on a far more profound level. When I was in your shoes around about a decade ago, just starting studying the cognitive psychologies and the life sciences. Now, this model is called the Wise Mind model. Now, it's a very, very basic, very simple model, but it's one that we can use to really understand ourselves and where it is that we thinketh out of, if that makes sense. If not, please allow me to explain. This Wise Mind model lets us look at and explore and appreciate the three different parts of our mind, not from a biological perspective, but more from a very, very practical perspective. And this is one of the fascinating things about cognitive behavioural therapy. There shouldn't be any ideas that are presented to you throughout this course that confuse you. There shouldn't be any that really dumbfound you. There shouldn't be any that are so complex that leave you absolutely bewildered. Now, that's not the experience that I had when I first started studying cognitive behavioural therapy. Unlike you, today you're able to take this training course online in the comfort of your own home, if that's in fact where you're at. Around about 10 years ago, I'd spent multiple thousands of pounds attending a live attendance-based course in a university where I was presented with death by PowerPoint, really stuffy lectures, people just reading off PowerPoints and out of books and case studies, and oh my goodness, it was so unrelatable. It wasn't actually until I first had this model presented to me that the cognitive psychologies really started then making sense. And I'm hoping that this is going to be true for you also. Hence the reason I want to build this idea right in at the start of the course for two main reasons, actually. First and foremost, so that you understand how it is that you can get the most out of this course. And the second reason, so that you're moving forward able to get as much out of your life as what you're physically able to by not boxing yourself in, which is something that many people do in life. You see, we have these three parts of our mind. We have the emotional mind, we have the rational mind, and we have the wise part. So let me unpack and explore all three aspects with you. Let's look at the emotional part of our minds first and foremost. Now, I live in Scotland, all right, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. When it comes to having conversations with guys, many guys would say that they're out of touch with their emotions. Many women would agree. Many women would say guys here in Scotland are so completely unemotional. They're very, very dry. Now, I would kind of debate this one just a little bit. Granted, they might not talk about their emotions regularly, but see, when you get a bunch of guys in a football stadium, if Rangers or Celtic are playing, something like that, yes, you'll then experience tens of thousands of guys getting highly emotional. And to be honest with you, the emotional part of our mind, when you're conversing with someone who's functioning out of here, they're going to communicate and interact with you in a very, very different way than what those who operate more out of the rational thinking part of their mind do. Right? It's the emotional part of our mind that triggers and gives voice to the fears, the doubts that we have in us. If someone who you're interacting with is operating from this part of their mind and they're happy, you're going to know all about it because these people tend to wear their heart on their sleeve. They're very, very easy to read. All right? Now think about your own life. Do you know anyone? Do you have any friends? Some people who are just so easy to read, and then those who you've really got to work a little bit harder with. Well, this is the difference between those who function out of the emotional part of their mind and those who operate outside of the rational part of their mind. If a person's sad, you're going to know it because they're going to be showing it. Many people who operate outside of this part of their mind will tend to react more to the circumstances, situations and life events that they find themselves in, opposed to processing what's going on and responding appropriately or accordingly. Now, what you might find is some people who are emotionally driven can sometimes be a little bit unreliable in life. Why? Because if you think about it, if the quality of a person's life is determined by how they feel on a day-to-day basis, well, on the days that they're feeling happy, this can be fantastic. But then the days that they're not feeling so happy, there might be doom and gloom. And here's the thing. What I'm going to suggest at this stage of the course is that our emotions are not a strong or a sustainable enough foundation for us to build and base our life on. Why? Because they change all of the time. Now, this is one of the main ideas that cognitive behavioural therapy looks to really unpack and explore, where our emotions actually come from. Because if you were to go to many general practitioners or doctors or mental health professionals around the world, Some people might be inclined to tell you that some emotions are illnesses, such as anxiety or depression, extreme sadness, stress, that they're disorders or dysfunctions in the human body in some way. But cognitive behavioural therapy doesn't take this perspective. It just simply looks at emotions for being what they are, feelings that come and go. But it doesn't just dismiss the importance of emotions and the role they play in our life. It doesn't. What it instead looks to do is explore where they actually come from. Kind of like our emotions can be an effect. And for every effect, there is a cause. So this is where the cause and effect principle comes into play. And this is what I want to help you to really understand and become grounded in within yourself throughout this course. And this is why cognitive behavioural therapy has been referred to as one of the most effective life sciences and helping disciplines modalities over the last 20 to 30 years. People who operate primarily outside of the emotional part of their mind, believe it or not, can sometimes be quite highly empathic people. Empathy is just simply when we are able to put ourselves in another person's shoes and look at life through their eyes, from their perspective, where we can sometimes feel what another person's feeling and really relate with them. The problem, again, with operating outside of this part of our mind is it can sometimes lead people to being slightly erratic in their behaviours and their actions and their habits or lifestyle choices that they make. And it's sometimes because they're operating more from a place of subjectivity than insight and truth, which is obviously objectivity. So there was a fantastic book written around about 7 or 8 years ago called The Chimp Paradox. Right, and this was written by an author named Dr. Steve Peters. And what he'd done was he's kind of taken this model and broken it down very, very simplistically. 2 parts of the mind. There's the part of our mind that kind of leads us to behave like a bit of a chimpanzee sometimes, a little bit erratic, where our actions and our behaviours are born out of our emotions. And then we have this human part of our mind, where we are slightly more aware of the events, the situations, the circumstances, the things that are going on around us, how people are being towards us, and then we simply react or respond more from a place of congruence and out of our values or our priorities, which many people would suggest is a wiser way of living life. Now, I'm not saying what is and what isn't the wisest way of living life. I just want to present you with some ideas at this stage that you'll hopefully be able to relate to yourself. Some people will function and operate outside of the rational part of their mind, right? The thinker, if you like. All right, now, have you ever had a conversation with an academic, a person who's highly academic, they're highly rational, engaging in a conversation with them can sometimes feel like a bit of a power struggle, all right? Why? Because people who function out of this part of their minds are sometimes more inclined to focus on what's right, what's wrong, who's right, who's wrong, who's got the right information, facts, information, and whilst all this stuff is fine, facts and information, well, unless we're actually building them into our lives and applying them, unless facts and information and ideas are enhancing and building our lives up, then they're absolutely worthless. They're quite meaningless, aren't they? So, this is where I want to share with you a few insights now about how we can get the most from this course, because you're going to be watching this video right now and you will be more inclined to function out of the emotional part of your mind, or you might be naturally more inclined to operate outside of the rational part of your mind. And it might be the case that you've even read a couple of CBT textbooks at some point in the past, all right? And you've got an opinion, or you've got some prejudices, or you've got some expectations. And there's this fascinating thing about expectations, and it's this, that in life, people are never disappointed in what they actually find. They're only ever disappointed when their expectations aren't met. Therefore, if we want to live a life that's free from disappointment, we must learn how to live a life that's free of expectation. Expectations are spawned and born out of the rational part of our mind, where we sometimes expect more of, in the future, that which we've experienced in the past, right? And these are some big ideas. I just want to touch on them right now, and we will certainly unpack them and explore them in greater depth as the training continues and evolves. Many people who operate outside of this part of their mind would rather enter into a debate with a person, but don't you thinketh, but I thinketh, kind of like a battle of the wits, rather than seeking to understand. It's one thing being knowledgeable, it's one thing being smart, it's one thing having all the certificates in the world, and then it's something else understanding, all right? And this is what I want to help you do throughout this course. Not just expand your intellect, not just grow your smarts or grow in information or in knowledge, but I want to help you grow in insight by not just looking at these ideas for the purpose of remembering them, but looking at not just ideas like this, but the rest of the ideas I'm going to share throughout the course and relate them to yourself so that you can gain insights and fundamentally understanding. Because unless you have these insights and understanding, then you're just going to be a really, really smart academic thinker, but you might struggle to empathically relate and connect with other human beings, especially through practicing cognitive behavioral therapy. So this is kind of what the Wise Mind is all about. It's a little bit in between. Rather than just being academically led and rather than just being emotionally led, we're looking to find a sweet spot in between. We're looking for insights, where we're looking to establish that which is true, because not all information is truthful information. And guess what? Sometimes our emotions can lead us completely astray. So we want to understand ideas, we want to understand ourselves, because if we do not understand ourselves, we're not going to be aware of ourselves, why we say and do the things that we say and do sometimes. And if we're not aware of ourselves, then we might find it difficult to manage ourselves. If we are not competent in managing ourselves, we might find it challenging to manage or influence other people, which is something that we're going to have to learn how to do as cognitive behavioral therapists. So we've got to get good at reflecting. We've got to get good at operating from this place of objectivity in life, not having an opinion about objectivity, and certainly not living in a place of subjectivity, because this is what it means to operate outside of the wise part of our mind. So that's the idea. This is the direction I want to be urging you to consider looking in, all right? Throughout this course, don't come at it from a rational perspective, and please don't come at it from an emotional perspective. Otherwise, we're going to fall into the trap of debating and arguing what's right, what's wrong. Instead, we want to look at all the ideas from a place of wanting to gain insights and wanting to understand. And the only way you're going to be able to do this is by relating them to yourself. So, anytime that we progress, in any videos, if you see a little image like this on the screen, like a little book with a CBT circle in the middle, you'll know that there's a workbook available in the additional materials section. So before you progress on to the next clip, I'm going to urge you to download the workbook and spend 5 to 10 minutes working through this model and applying it to yourself, just to see what insights you may gain.